The Devil's Passage by Tess Spooper. This encounter took place about 10 years ago when I was 15. I grew up in a small town just outside of Dublin, Ireland. There is a huge park in the outskirts of town which is visited by many people daily due to fishing ponds, baseball fields, and playgrounds. It is a beautiful park, and I'd spent many memorable summers and weekends just hanging around there with friends. Like most old towns, however, it had its urban legends. One such legend was about a section of the park known as the Devil's Passage. This legend stated that there was a particular location in the park that contains a cursed tree and features a lot of satanic worship. The origins of the legend are questionable at best, but having visited the location, I can see exactly why such a mystery surrounds the place. The Devil's Passage is partially enclosed by massive stone walls, creating a kind of courtyard feature. At the back wall of the enclosure, there was a small grove of trees that contained the alleged cursed tree. In reality, this tree was pretty weird looking. It appeared to be floating. The bottom of the tree was cut off, yet it was intertwined amongst the branches of the adjacent trees. Even though I always knew it wasn't haunted or cursed, it still gave me the creeps regardless. On Halloween of 2006, my two friends and I thought it would be fun to spend the night at the Devil's Passage. We were all very much into the paranormal, and we could think of no better place to spend Halloween. Looking back now, it was a pretty fucking stupid idea. It was such a secluded area and such a large park on a night when the whole city was out getting drunk and partying. After telling our parents we were going trick-or-treating, we headed to the park at around 6 p.m. We'd set up our spot at the very back of the grove within Devil's Passage. We decided we'd light a fire using some old newspaper we found and some sticks. Looking around at the empty beer bottles, burnt wood, and graffiti, it was clear that this place was a hot spot for underage drinking. Thankfully, we were the only ones there. Well, at least for the first few hours. After a short while spent sipping on beers that my friend managed to steal from his dad and puffing on cigarettes, we were visited by this middle-aged man. All of us panicked and started stamping out the small fire we had going. As the man approached, we could see he was wearing a formal black suit and white gloves. This man clearly wasn't the park ranger trying to kick us out. He had gray hair and a goatee. We yelled a hello over to him to see what he wanted. He just smiled and kept walking toward us. He told us not to worry and that we weren't in any kind of trouble. We asked him who he was and what he wanted from us. He said he was throwing a bit of a party at the location tonight and asked if we would like to stay for it. At first, my friends and I looked at each other with some disbelief. This guy certainly didn't look like the partying type, especially not the type to host a party on Halloween night. We told him that it was probably best if we just head off and that we were sorry to intrude on his party spot. He kept insisting that we stay and he could offer us free booze and drugs. He even told us that there'd be girls coming who would love to fuck us. Why didn't my friends think it was weird that a middle-aged man was inviting a bunch of 15-year-olds to a party in the woods? After a few minutes of him trying to convince us to stay, it all became way too intense for me, and I interrupted him. I told him that we had to go. My friends looked at me puzzled. "We might as well stay for a few more drinks. It's not even 9 p.m. yet," one of my friends said. I agreed, but told them that I'd be leaving by 10 p.m. with or without them. The more time we spent there, the more unsettled I felt. The man, who told us his name was Stuart, started asking us really weird and personal questions. Like if we were virgins, and if we'd ever have sex with another guy, and even if we would be willing to have an orgy. There was something clearly wrong with this guy. He seemed normal at first, but the more he spoke, the more he revealed himself to be batshit fucking insane. He kept telling us that the other partygoers would be coming very shortly with plenty of alcohol and drugs, but none ever arrived. Eventually I grew tired of waiting around and wasting time with this creepy fuck. I told my friends that I was leaving and that I'd see them later. As I began to walk away, Stuart became very anxious. He practically begged me to stick around. At first he was polite, playful even, joking about how I was letting my friends down and that I'll regret it if I don't stay. When I refused again stubbornly, the threats started to come. He told me that he'll kick the shit out of me if I try to leave. My friends finally started to back me up. They told the man that if he was going to be a dickhead, then they were also going to leave. He took out a knife from inside his suit jacket and started brandishing it. He told us that nobody would be going anywhere. With a sudden surge of adrenaline, I picked up a big log from off the ground and whacked him across the head with it. I screamed at the top of my lungs for him to get the fuck away from us, and dragged my friends by the arm and started running as fast as I could out of there. He chased after us for a little while screaming about how his friends would intercept us on the way out, and they'd catch us. He eventually gave up on his pursuit, and we managed to escape unharmed. To this day, I don't know who that guy was or what his motives were. So, creepy suited guy in the park, let's never meet again. All while growing up, my dad was a semi-truck driver. He drove full-time all over the country. My sisters and I got to travel with him for a week or two in the summer. This story happened to me when I was about 4, and for that reason I don't remember every detail. I was trucking with my dad, and he was experiencing some minor engine trouble. Before he was a truck driver, my dad was a mechanic, and did most of his own truck repairs. He had pulled over in a small truck stop to work on the truck. There was a tree next to the parking lot, so he sat me down underneath it with my doll, and he worked on the truck right next to me. It was really, really hot, and he was laying underneath the hot truck and blacked out. He was having a heat stroke, and when he finally came to with a splitting headache, he looked over to the tree to check on me. I was still just sitting there playing with my doll, but there was a guy creeping up behind me. He was reaching out and trying to grab me. I don't know how, but with the little energy my dad had left, he jumped out from underneath the truck, yelling and swinging whatever tool he had nearby. The guy ran off, and my dad collapsed. A lady working inside the truck stop saw the whole thing and came running out. She got me and my dad inside and took care of me while he cooled down.
I remember Ty, Kenny, and I were cruising down Salem, Oregon. It was midnight, and we were on our way to climb some schools, a little activity we used to do for fun. We got our drinks and picked a school. While we were trying to get out of downtown Salem, we were all having a blast, me sitting in the passenger seat, with Kenny in the back and Ty driving. This is where things got tense. Some bold, middle-aged man came up to our car after a series of tailgating and honking and gave me a look. I thought he was playing around or something, so I look him right in the face and make the most laziest mocking type of face in the world. I thought he'd laugh, or not even respond. Yet this obviously pissed him off, resulting in him get super close to our car. This was freaky. Keep in mind that my window was rolled down. I was cold, drinking my second Monster Energy drink, and receiving tons of adrenaline. This made my body shake a bit, kind of worrying me. After a few moments, he passed us by cutting us off on an intersection from the right lane. This means he made a nasty, illegal left turn that almost put all of us through our windshield. Just when I thought it was all over, something came over my friend. He began following this maniac, tailgating and flashing his high beams. Which was weird because Ty was never the aggressor. Kenny was laughing like a madman in the back seat. I asked him why so, and he replied, "Earlier, while we were in light traffic at red light, I flipped him off out of your window." He continued laughing. I snapped to reality and realized how bad this made me look. He was probably pissed that I flipped him off and tried to insult me as a result, but I gave him a shit-faced look. Things were speeding up. My friend wasn't talking, nor was he looking at me. He was almost hunched over the steering wheel and proceeded to follow this bold guy. We approached some exit and he stopped completely. Next thing I see is him flipping us off and doing the "what the fuck do you want" gesture with his left hand. His brake lights turned off and he continued to his right. My friend proceeded to follow him, which is when I started yelling at him. My body wasn't handling this load of energy combined with adrenaline. The next stop was too freaky. We approached the four-way that allowed cars to go right only from the far right lane and forward only from the left lane. It wasn't your typical four-way because the right turn looked more like an exit than a turn. This is where he stopped again. We were all experiencing mixed emotions at this point. Kenny was laughing and Ty was starting to loosen up. I was still shaken by the whole thing. And the light to go right was green, yet red to go forward. He was moving around in his seat as we talked about how crazy all of the things that just happened were, when he came out of his car doing the same gesture he did earlier. He was cursing and moving around. He laughed so hard because we have not yet realized how to feel about any of this. He noticed our sheer ignorance and got back in his truck. We thought he would get going and stop causing traffic. When I took a deep breath, I noticed all four lanes frozen, the green light was glowing for the other two lanes, yet everyone watched as this bold, crazy guy stepped out of his car holding a 24-inch katana. The look in his eyes still give me the chills. He looks like he had a license to kill. He began approaching our vehicle, and remember my window was completely open. My friend didn't think twice before he pressed his pedal and almost made juice out of the guy. That's how close I was to getting stabbed in the heart. Believe me, it was so possible, especially because of the size of Ty's car. We ran the red light as our tires made that unforgettable noise and watched him walk back like an animal towards his car. The attention felt good. It was like the spotlight was on all of us, but it made me sick to my stomach. He drove away, never to be seen again. We didn't catch his plates or any video evidence, but I can draw him any day. Those eyes. Lesson to be learned. Just be a little bit more careful on the road. You never know what kind of crazy people are behind the wheel.